then they're in trouble.
Well, one of the things we did, will he take the bait? I didn't realize the bait was this big a piece of bait. It's
Well, good morning, Racine. We're here to talk to you. Me and George Myers and Jim Spodek, our producer, and myself, Dr. Ken Jorgen. I think we ought to do a positive, uplifting, complimentary story today. What do you got?
I don't have anything like that.
You got anything, George?
Well,
I got nothing.
yeah.
Why don't we move on to the Sandy Widener case? And we got a copy of, this is from Sandy's attorney, right?
Well, it's a copy of part of the appeal that was submitted to the court.
Yeah. But the attorney had to do it, right?
Yeah, the attorney did this, right. And this is just a couple pages of an exhibit. We didn't get all, we got this.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, I mean, if you've been watching the show at all, Sandy Widener was going to be taken to the ethics board for some alleged ethical violations. That never happened. But there was evidence presented at an executive board meeting. And she says, well, I'd like a copy of that, And of course, she was told she couldn't have it. And it's been an argument back and forth. There's a court case that's been going on. There's a bunch of exchanges that Sandy apparently had and other people have had with constituents, which you would think is, that's normal. But there was an objection to some of the communications, and that was supposedly in violation of ethical principles. And Sandy says, well, I want to see the PowerPoint that you're using against me. And they said, well, you can't see it. And now it's taken on a kind of a life of its own. Originally, there was something like maybe mid-20s number.
20, somewhere in that range. These are emails
26.
that were, the city attorney said that she had given emails out that were attorney-client privilege, which was against the, they should have not been disposed or given to other individuals outside of city business. And
the argument was, well, there's just stuff back and forth.
It was nothing.
Constituents.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
We were actually received some of it. This was an executive committee that was in the heat of a campaign that what it was they were going to try to taint her with an ethics violation for this exposing these emails.
And the reason we believe that is because they brought this out into the public awareness during the height of the mayoral campaign.
Right.
And then afterwards, it didn't have any importance.
Correct.
They never bothered to schedule any kind of a
so
ethics
Sandy
board meeting.
In the beginning. Now we're talking 2017. I want to see this. What was presented at the executive committee, which only the people that were in this executive committee, which were basically all the aldermen in the city of Racine at that time.
And at that time, it was a PowerPoint presentation.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
She wanted to say, or see, if it's going to the ethics committee, I want to make sure that the same thing that was in the executive committee is given to the ethics board. That was the start of the whole thing. It went through a couple court cases. It went through locally here in Racine County, Judge Gaskargevich. It then went to the appeals court. Now it's in Kirkman's court. Now we did a show about, I don't know, maybe a month ago or maybe a little longer, that she's got a court case now in Kenosha.
Yeah, it was transferred to Kenosha, basically,
Right.
is what happened. Yeah.
And
It's Kirkman, that's his court.
that's his court. Now, what was done here, it was kind of back and forth. Sandy Widener's attorney now submitted to the court in Kenosha. If you go back to our show a couple weeks back, they were saying, well, this is the original executive committee PowerPoint that was being submitted to the Kirkman court. Well, the attorney for Widener has come up with this graphs and broke down exactly what was that he had saw in the executive.
Because he's seen all of these communications.
The only thing I don't believe he
It's
saw
like
was the
attorney's eyes
executive.
only.
He doesn't know that
So he's seen
original
everything.
PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
The only one that
Yeah.
knows that is going to be the city attorney, Letney, and he ain't saying.
Right. So this ethics submission. Now, I'd like to go through these pages. Now, this is a graph that he said, this is what supposedly was in the ethics, submitted to the ethics board. But what now is submitted to the Kirkman court is a way different animal.
And the point is that he is claiming the stuff he sent to the Kirkman court. He is claiming that it is the original PowerPoint presentation.
Correct. Now I'm going to play a little video real quick here, just so the viewers get it. Now this is of the last court hearing, and this was the city's attorney Cohen stating there's just a few changes in this, Your Honor, a few changes that were made in this.
Of course, there shouldn't have been any changes.
None changes.
But the appeals court said take a look at it again. You know, when it got that far, and they took some out, but.
Yeah, the whole thing was about that original PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
and you would think through all these hearings, you'd be talking about the original PowerPoint presentation.
Same materials.
It'd be like having a robbery, and you start off with one store, and you go to another store, and you go to another store, and maybe you never get back to the original store. Wait a minute, the whole issue was a robbery at this store.
Correct.
I don't want to talk about other stores.
All right, let me play this.
Well, you've been caught now doing one thing that was wrong. How many other things might there be?
That was under oath, too.
It was on an affidavit.
Here's it is. I want to just play a quick video here, and I want to just watch it closely, because this is the city's attorney Cohen stating to the judge that this is the PowerPoint, and it's in. This is the only PowerPoint, and this is the one. He states it to the judge. I'm going to cut to it.
Oh, I want to see this. Yeah.
It's quite unclear, Your Honor. Judge Gaster-Cabas went through a detailed analysis of the materials that related to the initial petition and rendered a decision with respect to privilege as to those materials. What's different with the amended petition is it includes a PowerPoint presentation which largely and completely incorporates those materials, but adds a couple slides related to what attorney-client privilege is, basically, the background for the privilege. So, in my view, from the city's view, much of what the judge has already done would apply to the amended petition other than a few frames.
Sounds pretty definitive to me that
Right
he
there,
was
he said-
absolutely convinced there's a one and only. Well, now we're kind of up to date there. Now let's take a look, and this is a great graph because it's reduced to colors.
Correct.
And then that's always an easy, understandable way of.
Kirkman should be able to figure this out.
A nice visual presentation, yes.
So have you got the?
I'm going to put them on the screen. So let's go to page 1 here. Now, if you look at the top, it says, not in the ethics board submission. Some portion, blue, is in the ethics board submission, and then entirely in the ethics board submission. So what we have here on this first page is 2 through 29. It actually goes to 41. So
one thing I hate to interrupt you, but we should clarify that originally there was somewhere in the 20s.
Maybe, yeah, 20,
Yeah,
low 20s.
20-some PowerPoint items. And now there are how many?
70.
Couple of changes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we break it down, I'm gonna put this on the screen so you take a look at it. But if you go through 2 through 41, these are all additions to the PowerPoint.
In red, it says at the top that each one of those boxes vertically, you have a line of boxes and part of it blacked out. The blacked out part is because all this is secret.
Confidential.
Yeah, only lawyers are about to look at it.
Only really smart people can look at it. Really
That is a description of the PowerPoint slide, but it's been blacked out because nobody's allowed to see it. But the point was, is each of those lines represents one or more of the slides that were in the original PowerPoint presentation. Now, if it's in red, it means that although it's being told to you, Judge, that's part of the PowerPoint presentation, the fact is it was not in the submission to the ethics board. It was not actually in that presentation, and that's what that little key at the top of the page shows in that little circle.
So how does it look on your chart? On your chart, it looks like there's 41 of them.
Correct.
41 of them, which is more than there were to begin with.
additions.
They weren't in there at all.
Right, so
41
that's additions to the original. So let's go to page 2. Okay, page 2 is up. So the gold color one, that was an original email that was in the PowerPoint presentation.
And it's also submitted to the court.
It's submitted to the court. So 2 on this page. So now we're up to, and the blue is a partial, meaning partial. A part of that email is submitted to this court. Not the full one, just partial.
Now, and point that first yellow one is numbered 42. That's what you see over there. So that represents one particular slide or one particular email, and then the next blue one is a 43 and a 44. So each one of those lines is a separate email. And so the first yellow one you see on that page means that although it's presented as being there, it was there. That's what the other. So I have one gold one. Then the next 2 were not there, or some part of it were there. That's because it's blue. So the yellow one says, okay, we're straight with you. It was there, and you're presenting to the judge that way. The next 2, though, you're presenting that only part of it was there. The next one, number 45, you're saying it's there, and it was never there. And then you get 2 more blue ones that were part of it were there, and then you get a yellow one. It was there. So the point was we're seeing in colors, and you look at that, you look at the first 2 pages, out of all those emails that are presented, we're up to 48 of them, only 2 of them are really there in its entirety. Most of them were not there at all, and about 1, 2, 3, 4 of them were there partially.
Okay, let's go to page 3. I'll get that on there.
Now we're talking about truthfulness. These are lawyers presenting this to the judge as being factual and truthful.
So now again, there's only 2 out of this on this page that were actually original in the slides in the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, number 49 and number 51. Those are in yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're up to 51 emails now, and now we're up to 4 of them that were actually there in its entirety, but a whole bunch were either only there partially or not at all. And those blue ones mean they were there partially.
Okay, let's go to the next page. Let's go to page 4. Now we got a regular hit here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that were actually in their entirety.
In the yellow, we're entire 58, 59, 60, and 63.
But 61, 62, and 64 were an add-on.
Not there at all. Never
Not
saw
there at
them
all.
before at all, Your Honor.
Now let's go to page 5.
Whoa, holy, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, and 70 were never anywhere to be seen in that ethics
Okay,
board committee.
so we've got from roughly 20 emails in the PowerPoint presentation, the ethics board submission. We're now 3 years later in a court situation. We've now got 70 PowerPoint slides, completely different.
70, grown from 20 to 70.
A completely different animal. We've got them saying, Your Honor, this is the original PowerPoint in the court proceedings and affidavits. What's going on?
You know, and I don't want to. I'm sure it's been a little confusing to look at this, but I'm going to throw a little bit more confusion into it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go for it.
Yeah, I know, because remember what we said at the beginning of this thing is the original PowerPoint presentation is only known by Scott Letney, the city attorney. What we're using as truthful in the yellow ones are really what was shown to the ethics board. There might have even been some changes between the original PowerPoint presentation and was shown to the ethics board.
Well, are we talking about
In
the
fact,
ethics board or the executive committee?
Well, the executive committee is the original PowerPoint
Was
presentation.
the original.
Right.
And then that was reported to the ethics board, and I think we knew there were some that were already taken out.
I don't remember exactly.
Was
We
there
never
some
saw
the
missing-
appellate court had referred it back to
Right.
Judge Gashikevich and said, take a look at this. Are you serious? So they decided to pull a couple out.
Here's what I think. This has been padded big time. And this has been padded to Kirkman to say, listen, Judge, it's attorney's eyes only. No one can see it, including Widener. So we're just going to keep feeding
because
him
they don't trust
malarkey.
Widener.
Yeah.
I think they
Because
don't
she might
trust
actually
Andy
come
to
up with
tell
the
the truth. Yeah.
The truth might
we don't want
actually
any bunch
pop
of
up.
truth stuff coming out.
Yeah,
of
we
this
certainly
thing.
don't want truth in the court.
That's a dangerous thing.
No truth in this courtroom.
Yeah.
So this has been padded, is what it was. So there may be emails in here that are actually attorney-client privilege, but there certainly weren't in the executive committee.
And the problem was the ones the ones that are added might never have been passed around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See? So in other words, we had to throw some in there that were never passed around, and they were confidential, and they were kept confidential. But we're gonna assume that because it's thrown in with some of these others, that maybe Sandy had been violation.
Well, I'm stepping out here a little bit. You're the math guy, but I did a little arithmetic here, and there's 70 total items. 70. 10 of them, some portion of those 10 appeared in the original PowerPoint. 8 of them, the entirety of that PowerPoint was submitted to the ethics. 52 came in later. In fact, I think this is the first time they actually showed up, isn't it?
This is the first time we've had any indication. We knew that they said in one of their pleadings that there were some slight changes, but we're talking 3 times the amount of the total.
Check my math here, George. 52 and 10 is 62 and 8
That's
is 70.
Yeah.
I thought I had it right, but I thought...
Unbelievable.
You did good job. You did good for a doctor.
Okay,
they're best in addition when they're looking at their bills.
That was a low blow.
Anyway, what is the purpose? Why the padding? Why the deception to the Kirkman court?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the judge does. What would you do if you were a judge and you got this?
You know what it is? I think the judge, this is what I think. I think the whole time we've got the city attorney, we got a high-powered attorney out of Milwaukee, you got a judge up here who's basically lazy that says, let it go, I don't have to read anything. Those guys are right. They couldn't be doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And now it comes down to where the genius of this is that it's color-coded, and Kirkman can actually look at it and
Doesn't
say...
have to read anything.
Doesn't have to read.
Just look at the colors.
This doesn't look right.
Wait. Has anybody checked to see if he's colorblind?
Oh.
That could be. I just...
They might be taking advantage
I wanna
of
watch
disability
this.
on the judge's part. If he's visually disabled and they did this to take advantage of him, that is really cruel.
Shame.
That is bad.
It's so obvious what's going on here. I cannot believe they're going to continue this and give any kind of credence to the city.
Well, the record is sealed. They'll get away with it.
It's just
Except for
amazing to me.
There's 3 guys out on Talking Racine that talk about this stuff. The judge might get a hold of this and actually take a look, and then they're in trouble.
Well, one of the things we did, will he take the bait? I didn't realize the bait was this big a piece of bait.
Up this morning before the sun, fix me some coffee and honey bun. Jump in my pickup, give her the gas. I'm going out to catch a 5-pound bass.
If I had this much bait, I'd eat the bait. Why the hell do you want to bother catching fish?
I mean-
There's plenty of food here.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is so... But I'll tell you one thing, Widener's attorney, this was a genius move.
Yeah.
I mean, this breaks it right down to say, here, this thing has been padded, and of course you can't read what was submitted. Only Widener would know, and the original board, executive committee, which was all the aldermen. And so there's no question that Widener should be given the access to these emails to look at. I mean, that would be the only right thing to do in that courtroom. Will it happen?
I don't know. You know what's going to be good is if this stuff ever comes out and the public actually sees what kind of crap they're pulling here. They'll look at these emails and go, are you kidding?
Yeah, I know it.
Are you kidding? This has been going on for how many years? And
This is
what do
3
you
years
think
now.
the legal bills are by this
huge.
time? Couple $100,000?
Oh, bet you over that. Yeah, over that.
And all Scott Ledney had to do was let her see the stupid PowerPoint presentation. What was the big secret there? I mean, she just
Stupid
wanted-
digs in deeper, George. Stupid keeps digging.
If he had just given her the PowerPoint presentation, and then they had pursued it the same way they're pursuing now, which is nothing, then I don't think it ever got to the ethics board.
No.
Well, what if
They
what
would
if
be
they
sitting
had-
right now with Sandy having the PowerPoint presentation, and nothing else happening. She would just be sitting with it,
Right.
because it never got taken to the ethics board.
What if she
Anyway.
gave it to some like talk show and they ridiculed the public officials, live?
Well, that would be the only thing, and I don't know if Sandy would ever had that interest, but it was.
Yeah.
It depends on what was in those things. Because some of them were pretty stupid. I mean,
Just benign stuff. Well, the one that
the one that I got
Yeah.
was requested. There was a special election coming up, and what days could the election be held?
yeah.
And so went through this process of taking every Tuesday, whatever it was, and the clerk was missing on this day, or this day was a vacation, or this day was blah, blah, blah. And it came out to, out of the 20 that were looked at, there were 3 possible dates, and let's take the first one.
Well, I know
That was a big
Yeah.
secret.
I know you pretty well, and that kind of information in your hands can
Yeah.
be dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, you're all right. Let's take what's Kirkman going to do? Oh, he's obviously can figure this out. He doesn't even have to read. He can figure this out. Color coded. You don't have to see. There's 52 emails that are PowerPoint slides that have been added to. Only 8 of the originals show up, and then how many of the blue have been tampered with? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. What's he going to do?
Well, but again, if he is colorblind, I'm easy to get a hold of. So is Jim and George, and we can tell you which ones are gold, blue, and red, if that is an issue. You never know.
You think he's just going to say, "Oh, everything looks fine. We're going to keep it sealed and case dismissed"?
Yeah, they're all gray.
What do you think, George? You think this is going to open up a little activity in the courtroom?
I don't see. Courts don't work that way. They have to be right. The heck with truth. The main thing is, we have to be right, and they can't say, "Well, I've been making a mistake all this time. I didn't realize how badly I had ruled on this thing." And that.
Or badly
And I
ruled.
didn't think I'd get caught.
Yeah. How badly? See, you're right.
Yeah. I don't see that coming about. What we're trying to do? What is the? With all the rigmarole going on, I've kind of lost track of what we're trying to do at this stage. We're trying to get a ruling on whether she should see the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, it's from the beginning. It's been about, I just want to see the PowerPoint presentation to make sure it's the same one that is submitted to the ethics committee. And it's obvious they've completely tampered with this completely, and now,
That's beyond tampering. That's a complete rebuild.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
What could he do? Wow, that's
why? And now you got Kirkman here looking at this. He's got to look at this and say there's something not quite right here, because the original process that should have been done early on has now taken 3 years for the cover up.
I think he's at least got to ask the city's attorney, not the city attorney,
Right.
but the attorney that the city hired to represent the city. What's going on here? Why all the changes?
See, I think what's happened here is they never thought that Widener's attorney would look at these, dig in that far, dig in that deep. It would have just been, let's just work this out and it'll all go away. We'll have a, sign and
Sign
seal.
and settle. Yeah.
Sign and settle. Yep, we're going to just get this taken care of. This attorney went in, actually broke it down, read them. It took a long time to put this together, but he came up with the truth. Now the truth is in the courtroom. Now, is the truth
right.
going to win? Or is
Yeah.
or the cover-up going to win?
I've understood that the truth does sometimes make an appearance in courtrooms.
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I've seen a
it
lot of
sneaks
that.
up sometimes.
Yeah.
on the
Well,
job.
let's move on. We'll keep a close
All right.
watch on this, and we'll let you know of the next development. In the meantime, another favorite subject of yours is taxes. We got a little chart here, too. In 2021, that's this year, as opposed to 2020, the percentage of the budget going to debt service is going to go up in 2021 from 30% to 34%. Why should the debt service take a jump like that?
Well, hopefully, it's because they paid off a little bit more of the debt.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. This is what the city calls debt services, and I'm presuming they can get away with it because the accounting rules for government vary a little bit with the accounting rules for the private sector. If if the private sector, a company that's, let's say, sells its stock publicly, if it were to use debt service the way the city's using debt service, somebody in that corporation would be going to jail. Because this is, debt service normally means the amount of interest paid on the debt plus the amount of debt reduction. And there's no way this city is using 34% of its budget to reduce the debt. What they use, some of it is used for interest on the debt, which is about $3.5 million a year, as I recall. The rest of it, though, is what I would call revolving debt. In other words, they pay off a whole bunch of bonds. You know, bonds are generally 10, 5, 10, 20-year bonds, so they have to pay them off. But then they turn right around and they buy new bonds to replace them. So it's really revolving debt. It's not debt reduction. And they're using the wrong terminology, and that's where I say if a company were doing that, paying off bonds and then turning around and borrowing it right away and calling it debt reduction, they'd be in serious trouble with some government auditors. So
auditors, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be good. It'd be,
Yeah, if we could get somebody to audit, that'd be great.
yeah, why don't we audit
How is it that
audit
the city
books
doesn't
here,
have
Racine?
audits?
well, the city has audits, and
Yeah,
this
well,
is the thing.
audits.
This
Are
is
those
the
real
thing.
audits?
Yeah,
Well,
they-
yeah, they check and see if column A adds up to the same as
Right.
Column D over here. You know,
No, that's what they do. Make sure the debits and the credits equal. In other words, it'd be like putting so much money into your checking account, taking so much out, and seeing the balance. The auditor would come in. Okay, there were so many checks, so many deposits, and the balance is right.
But a forensic audit,
Forensic looks at, well, what were those checks written for?
Yeah, where'd the
and
money
where'd
go?
the money come from? You know, so that's what a forensic audit. And so the audit that the city gets is simply deposits minus expenditures equals the balance, and
they're
that's
basically just checking the math,
that's right.
Pretty much.
like I just
Okay.
had you do.
Like I said with the checkbook, you know, you're making sure your checkbook balances. But as far as looking into how the money was spent, that is not part of the audit.
Okay. Back in episode 25, now we're going back a ways, John Dickert stated when he was mayor that he was going to reduce this debt almost down to zero
By 2030, I think, wasn't it?
by 2030. Now, is that possible? Do you think that was possible, George?
Anything was possible, but not the way the city was going about it.
Okay, I'm going to play this.
For a while, they weren't even reducing the debt in that thing.
What amazes
Nobody
me is
started to
that you
reduce it,
have aldermen in when we were back at episode 25, we're at 211 now, and that they were talking about this debt. We're going to reduce this debt, or this debt's going to be reduced, and we're working on this debt.
Oh, you
I'm
had a
gonna- I'm gonna
nice
play it.
graph, too.
He had a graph.
All right, you look, see here, it keeps going down.
All right, I'm going to play this, and then we'll come
Okay.
back and comment on it.
You forgot to point out the years moving forward, we restructured our debt to a point where, if you look closely, just about disappears by the term of 2030, and in the next couple of years it goes down to one of the historic low levels. Why does it
And you
do
know,
that?
anybody can put lines on paper. I've done so right here. And if you notice,
Nice graph.
it's going down here. And what I've graphed here,
You should help Dickert.
this is the mayor's popularity rating. And if you notice, it's getting down near zero. So go ahead and fire up the video there again, Jim. Well, I feel a lot more comfortable now, don't you?
I'll tell you, it's funny because the same people are doing the same thing. Nothing's changed. The debt is certainly not going to be paid off in 2030 or any time after that, because at that time, Alderman Widener, she was on the Common Council at the time, was questioning this. You're talking about this debt, this graph going down. No one could see it. No one knew it. It was just fluff. We're still at this debt ratio. We're still paying off debt. We're still revolving the debt. Nothing changes. And the aldermen, buffaloed then, they're buffaloed now.
You know, a long time ago, a fellow by the name of Tom Friedel promised us that we could get a new capital expenditure survey budget. He said it was such a plum that we all forgot about it.
Did you ever see it?
We never saw it. It was the most amazing. Oh, yeah, I remember him saying, "Oh, you want that? No problem. Get it for you right away."
That's a good trick.
Never. That was a good ploy because we all just relaxed. You know.
Yeah,
Oh,
and now
that
he's
was good.
retired.
Now he's gone, and we're still doing it. I tell you who's got it, though, is Kenosha's got it. And I don't have the exact numbers, but it was something like this. We have a $400 million capital improvements program. It goes over 20 years. And it's covered in about something in the neighborhood of 10 pages, 10, 20 pages. Kenosha has a 5-year one, and it goes on for like 200-300 pages. And it's because their explanation of how the money is spent, I mean, they've got the make of the car and the condition that it's in and how long it's been doing, and I don't know. I think
the
it might
curbing
even the
that's
last
going
few
to be
repairs.
changed on
They got all
the
that-
street. You know, how much curbing is going to be replaced on that particular street this particular year. I mean, they're very, very
and you'll have a
detailed.
picture of the street, you know, on the map showing where it is. I mean, they have 3 or 4 pages per item. In Racine, we have one great big sheet for all 20 years, you know, all items.
Well, we're saving on paper. That's why taxes
Yeah,
are
I
so
know.
low here.
That's why Kenosha, you have actually activities that actually are performed and actually done, and there's an accountability to it. Racine, it's just numbers that keep floating.
Well, it's automatic,
Yeah.
or there's so many tens of thousands of dollars for garbage trucks, or 200, whatever it is, every year. And so whether they need to buy those trucks or not, it gets spent, it gets replaced. Whereas in Kenosha, if you want to replace a truck with their system, with their accounting system and their budgetary papers, it explains what's wrong with the truck, how long it's been around, why it needs to be replaced, and what kind of truck is replacing it. It's got all kinds of information for each item, not just, well, we're going to do another $20,000 this year.
We're done. We can't take any more of this. It's a Monday morning. It's tough on 3 old guys. So have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and come back and see us tomorrow. Thanks for being here.